The Las Vegas Raiders have officially drafted a wide receiver in Jack Bech, and I am excited for the Las Vegas Raiders to bring this guy in. I'm excited to talk about what Jack Bech brings to the Las Vegas Raiders because we knew the Raiders needed a true X wide receiver. They've officially went out and drafted a guy that I think can play that position. Let's talk about this, man. So the Raiders were obviously on the clock. 38 overall pick. I was kind of getting nervous a little bit. And bam, they trade out of that pick. And they picked up an extra third round pick. Right, the Raiders trade pick 38. They go back 11 picks, and they get an extra third round pick. They also swapped the late round pick as well. And 45 minutes later, I get excited. Bam, the Raiders trade out of it again with the Texans. The Raiders made a couple of trade backs, which I'm okay with. I would hope that they had Jack Bech in mind when they made those trades, because Luther Burden was right there for the Raiders. Will Johnson was right there. Mike Green was also right there if the Raiders wanted him, and they've made multiple trade backs, and they decided to go with Jack Bech. So I would hope that the Raiders actually thought that, hey, we want Jack Bech this much. This guy has potential, man. I'm excited to really get into this guy. So let's just get right into this guy. So Jack Bech, to me, is going to be an X wide receiver for the Raiders. He's about 6'1.5", 6'2", so he has that length to be a wide receiver, true X wide receiver. This is a guy that was recruited initially to Georgia. He went to Georgia, had a really, really good true freshman season, right? He had 45 catches, 500 yards, 3 or 4 touchdowns. So his freshman year at Georgia, this guy was doing a really, really good job. And after a couple of seasons, he ended up transferring out of Georgia. He didn't get the playing time that he felt like maybe he should have gotten. He ended up going to TCU. And as he got into TCU, 2023 was his first year. He was okay, but in that second season with TCU, he really took off, right? Which was this most recent season. And the guy actually had a really good season at TCU after transferring away from Georgia. The guy ended up having 62 catches, 1,034 yards, and 9 touchdowns. And this guy's tape kind of speaks for itself, right? Jack Bech is one of those guys that's an elite route runner. He's an elite separator. And he's not super explosive by any means, right? He doesn't have that speed over the top that someone like Trey Tucker or Henry Ruggs, for example, would have had. Right? That's not Jack Bech's tape. Right? That's not what his game represents. To me, Bech is one of those guys that's going to be a route runner. He's going to separate. He's going to create separation by basically just being able to beat people. And, that's essentially what his game is. It kind of reminds me of Cooper Kupp mixed with Ladd McConkey. Right? Both guys, I think, are true X wide receivers. And they're not the type of X wide receiver that like Devontae Adams or Justin Jefferson are. But they're the type of X wide receiver where you got to respect it. And if it's just one guy, if one corner is trying to cover Cooper Kupp, he's going to beat this guy super quickly. Ladd McConkey is very similar as well. Puka Nacua is another guy that kind of fits that same mold. If you're going to single cover these wide receivers, they're going to beat those corners, right? Unless the corner is like an elite, Charles Woodson, Jalen Ramsey caliber player, Jack Bech is going to be able to beat those guys. And of course, that's the type of, player profile he has. I'm not saying he's going to be a superstar in the NFL by any means. He has to prove that. And I'm going to be a little critical of this pick, which we'll talk about a little bit later on. But just to kind of talk a little bit more about what this guy's going to provide to the Raiders. When I think about Devontae Adams, one of the things I noticed right away is, Devontae Adams gets out of his break 3-4 steps, very explosive. They're elite the way he gets out, right? Hunter Renfrow kind of did this as well, where he'll get out of his stance, he'll take a inside move to the left, and he'll quickly go back to the outside, right? Or he'll take an outside release and he'll fake inside before, hitting some sort of outside break. Vice versa. He'll take an outside release, he'll fake inside, he'll fake outside like he's going to go to the corner, and then he'll hit a post route, right? Jack Bech runs really, really good routes, and he's able to create separation running routes. He's not the type of guy that's going to beat people over the top with his pure speed and athleticism. Although he is quick enough where if you do throw him the ball downfield, if he just gets a yard on a guy, he can reach out there, right? He's a guy that shows late hands. He's a guy that can make catches. He's a guy that can have success with the Raiders. He's a guy that I personally like, right? I think it's a good pick for the Raiders. I will say this. I do hope that John Spytek and Pete Carroll actually felt that, hey, we're going to make these trade backs because we think we can get Jack Bech maybe with pick, 58 or whatever, right? I do hope the Raiders had the entire mindset that, hey, Jack Bech is the guy that we really, really, really want, right? Because this guy has a ton of upside. And more than that, just to kind of talk a little bit more about his tape. He went to Georgia. He was pretty solid his first year at Georgia. He went to TCU. He had a really, really good final year at TCU. But even more than that, this guy went to the Senior Bowl, right? And this guy was named the game's most valuable player, right? Jack Bech was the MVP of the Senior Bowl. That kind of talks a little bit about his tape. I think he had like 6-7 catches, 70 yards, and a touchdown at the Senior Bowl. The Senior Bowl week, this guy dominated, right? He was able to create separation against some of the elite corners, right? To me, the one thing I really like with Bech's tape, and the thing that I think is going to translate is now for the Raiders, you have Jacoby Myers, who kind of does it all. You have Brock Bowers in the middle that also kind of does it all, but Brock Bowers can also beat guys deep. Brock Bowers can go over the top. Brock Bowers can do a lot, right? And Jack Bech is kind of similar to Brock Bowers in that instance. Obviously, it is a little bit different, right? Bech is going to be a little bit of a better route runner than Brock Bowers. But I think Bech has a ton of upside. I think he has a ton of potential, and I think for the Raiders, he's a solid pick. But I will take a step back, and I will be honest with you guys. One of the things I told myself back in 2019, 2020 was I'm not going to just say every Raiders pick is a really, really good pick, right? Especially because I've now watched tape for years. I've analyzed drafts for years. I'm like 7-8 years into analyzing drafts. I've picked guys that have been really, really good, right? Christian Darrisaw. I pounded the table for the Raiders to take this guy. If you guys watched my content back then, you guys know how I feel about how I felt at that time. And the Raiders took Alex Leatherwood over Christian Darrisaw. And the thing is when teams are making these picks, you realize real quick that not every general manager in the NFL is actually smart. Not every general manager knows what they're doing, right? The Alex Leatherwood pick was a great example of just being terrible. It was a terrible, terrible pick. You can even go years beyond, years after that, right? Like Cleveland Farrell, for example. Well, Cleveland Farrell is a different situation. But like, taking Tyree Wilson over Jalen Carter or Darnell Wright, right? Jalen Carter, Darnell Wright, the tape in college was what it was. Those guys were elite players in college. You knew it was going to translate into the NFL. Tyree Wilson was always developmental. And I'm not saying I'm giving up on Tyree Wilson, right? But what I'm saying is sometimes, that a general manager is legit, while at other times, maybe the general manager just isn't good. And the thing with John Spytek, I'm not saying he's not a good general manager, but what I'm saying is John Spytek has never been the guy to draft. So I'm going to keep an open mind, right? I was very, very critical of Dave Ziegler because Dave Ziegler in 2 drafts showed me he sucked at drafting, right? In 2 whole ass drafts, we got literally no one with the Dave Ziegler years, right? We got a couple players that are okay players, right? But like, you took Tyree Wilson when you could have gotten Jalen Carter or Darnell Wright. You took Zamir White, right? And to me, I don't know how you drafted Zamir White. I think it was a terrible pick. Dylan Parham is not a good offensive lineman. That was a 3rd round pick, right? To me, Dave Ziegler proved himself year after year after year that he was a bad general manager. And there's a reason why the Raiders let him go. We saw what last season Tom Telesco did for the Raiders. Tom Telesco's a good general manager, right? He learned from his first experience with the Chargers, and he even got better and better and better with the Chargers over the years, right? And I will keep an open mind with John Spytek. I will criticize him when it needs to be criticized. I'm not saying Jack Bech is going to be a bad player. That's not what I'm saying at all. I actually like this pick. I think for where he got picked, right, he's the 50th overall pick. I think it's a good pick for the Raiders. He will have to develop, and we'll see how his game actually translates. From college, this guy has really good tape, right? At least from that final season, this guy has really, really good tape, and we'll see how it translates into the NFL. And if Jack Bech actually does translate how I think he will be, that means John Spytek's a good general manager, right? And that means the Raiders are in a really good spot. But I'll also say this, one of the things with the Raiders is they're very, very, very heavily going into, we need to get better on offense. We need to improve the offensive production, the playmakers. And they've done that over the first 2 days. Ashton Jeanty makes you a lot better, and Jack Bech makes you better, hopefully, if he develops into what we think he can be. That makes you a lot better, right? And we will also just kind of, to be honest, we will kind of keep an eye, whenever Kyle Williams gets picked, Luther Burden, a couple other wide receivers were drafted as well, right? I forget the other guy that ended up getting drafted at Iowa State. I think it was the 1st or 2nd pick in the 2nd round. We're going to keep an eye on these guys, right? We'll see how these guys kind of develop as we go forward. And Jack Bech will kind of be compared to some of these guys, right? And we'll see if John Spytek was the guy that picked the right wide receiver or if he's the one that took the wrong wide receiver, right? We will criticize him if that needs to be. But generally speaking, I do like the pick. There's potential and upside. And sometimes it just takes a little bit longer for a guy to develop. Sometimes he just has to be put into the right position, essentially, right? Jack Bech, to me, has huge upside. We saw Jaden Daniels have one really good year in college. We saw Cam Ward have one really good year in college. And Jack Bech had a really good year in college. And I hope it's just that it really clicked. They got into a good scheming system, and that's what allowed these guys to have success. So we'll see how, he kind of goes forward. I want to know what you guys think, man. There are people that are going to criticize this pick. I do understand it, but I do think he's going to be a good football player for the Raiders. Thumbs up, subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time with another video.